Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever you happen stance into this Truth Bomb riff and this incredible panel of the new Untouchables. And we're recording on Friday afternoon, June 20th, 2025, approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's so great to see all of you. As always, I will put the descriptions and links to all of the uh, those that are joined on this discussion and their work, prolific work. And I'll do just quick introduction. I'm on my upper left, looking like a album cover from the '70s, June Carbone. I'm thinking of like Queen when I look at that black dark background. June Carbone, the Rubicon Chair of Law, Technology, and Science at University of Minnesota, and so much more. Thank you so much for joining us. To my right is going to be Mark Dan, former AG of Ohio and currently in practice at Dan Law. Further below, of course, is the legend, the myth, William K. Black. Obviously, the guy you want if we're going to go into a massive battle with the dark forces of corruption. And thank you for all that you do and have done, Bill. And to his right, somebody who has been really delivering some amazing material with Mr. Black and Mark and June. And I keep seeing it come up. Of course, my colleague Eric Vaughn from the unbelievable Corruption Incorporated, The American Way. So, guys, let's get right into it. Obviously, a lot to talk about, but I think I want to start with just kind of setting the table of this fire hose of information that comes at us all the time, but maybe prioritize something that hopefully you guys can all angle in on and kind of give us an opening reaction or opening salvo to where we are from where you're sitting. And I'll start with obviously, Mr. Trump, or I should say President Trump's 2-week announced window that he'll make up his decision, make up his mind whether or not to maybe get us into World War III, like the cover of Mad Magazine and everything that goes with it. But in context to Taco, and of course, in California deciding last night that he does have the authority over the National Guard in California and what that means, given everything that's happened with ICE and all things disruptions in California. But also, further to these scenarios, I just find over and over, it seems like a waterfall of lunacy, right? With all of the players within the Trump administration, with all of these massive things, but hanging over our response last week to the No Kings protests, where we saw hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people come out across the country. But at the same time, of course, given the state that you're from, both Bill and June, of course, your senator and her husband were murdered, which were an indication of further egregious extreme acts that also seem to be coming directly from the administration. Not to conflate those two things, but my point being that we're seeing Senator Alex Padilla arrested on top of all of the other things we can go into. So I think I'll just leave it up there. And I'm just curious, June, where do you come in given all of the things that are coming at us?
Well, everything we've been talking about from the beginning. First, if you go back to David K. Johnston's descriptions of Donald Trump, he's a born con artist. He doesn't know very much. He doesn't do his homework. He tells you what he wants to hear. He spins things. And he's focused on increasing his leverage in negotiations the way, frankly, a chump change businessman would be. What he has happened the first time around, he appointed people who were the mainstays of the Republican Party who knew what they were doing and found out they said no to him because they recognized he was crazy and didn't know what he was talking about. So those people aren't there this time. And it's all about him. I say, what do tariffs and pardons have in common? He's the center of attention. He has unlimited power. And at least unless the courts rule against him on the tariffs. And he can dangle these things to try to get whatever deal he wants. But what deal he wants is not a permanent deal for the United States. Now, if all he was going to do is tank the world economy, that actually might be a good thing for a variety of reasons. Bill is happy to talk about that. But But when you're talking about war, this becomes a very serious matter, and that's where that's where we are.
Sorry for the delay there, Bill. I think I want to go to you given that comment. I mean, obviously, plenty on your mind, but again, a lot to sift through. Where do you start, Bill?
Well, first, as Minnesotans, not only to see the viciousness of the attack, I mean, this man failed to kill two of his victims by, despite reportedly putting a total of 17 bullets into them, right? It it really takes something in a human being with a helpless victim to keep pumping lead into them. I mean, this is a level of depravity. But his level, the assassin's level of depravity, was like nothing compared to the Republican Party. And in particular, Mike Lee, who was once the human face of the Republican Party in Utah, right? He was the never Trumper type of thing. That was the voice of reason. And he knowingly instead spread this lie that this was a disgruntled Democrat, and that he was actually killing people because they were abortionists, when it's exactly the opposite. And it was absolutely clear it was exactly the opposite. And that, at least as I understand it, Lee still hasn't apologized, has still not admitted that he was lying. And that's after one of our U.S. senators from Minnesota tracking him down, which was hard, and to his face, urging him to be a mensch, right? To be a human being. And, no, they just, this is the level of depravity that you fall to when there's a Gresham's dynamic. And the bad ethics, drives the good ethics out of any competition. In this case, Trump deliberately sets up a competition to be vile, right? And the Republican Party as a whole has decided to descend into the category of being vile. I will just pick up briefly something that June mentioned, and I won't explore it because of time reasons, but much has been made about how many cases we're winning in lawsuits against Trump. But much of that has to do with, in tennis, it'd be called an unforced error by Trump, right? He just got in the way of himself, and it was being fought in environments where there was far less deference to the executive by the judiciary. There are huge portions of the law that this court in particular gives the most extraordinary deference to the president's power to do everything in the executive branch, and in particular, anything even vaguely related to national defense. So we had the prime in LA spokesperson for the Trump administration, Kristi Noem. And what did she say was the reason to the Guard and how they were going to operate, the National Guard, the nationalization of the California Guard? She said, "We are not leaving. We are going to liberate Los Angeles and California from these socialists and burdensome. You have too many rules, so we're going to destroy democracy, and we're going to take over the governmental functions of California. And what you've just seen is the most progressive circuit in the nation, possible argument with the DC circuit, panel unanimously ruling for Trump on the ability to take over the guard, even when it is clearly pretextual, on the basis that if there is any violence, if there are stones thrown in any city in America, that is a legitimate basis for the President of the United States to nationalize the guard over the objections of the governor and institute what will become martial law. That should be terrifying. And once the administration is fighting on this much better legal grounds, their percentage of wins will go up spectacularly.
Well, I have been saying on this channel and everywhere I can for a very long time that the whole point is corruption births and fuels fascism. And, I come at life with a sense of humor, guys. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and I've had some wonderful, entertaining vehicles to be able to cull from, I should say, whether it was National Lampoon's, Animal House, well, National Lampoon in general, or Monty Python's Flying Circus, or let's say all things Gonzo, and I could go down the list. Mad Magazine comes to mind, right? And the Mad King, and all of the different ways that we could, through satire, frame what's happening around this. But what Bill just laid out in context to Mike Lee too, it's like, oh my God, we're over the Rubicon, and every other, sort of proclamation you can go to along those lines. And Mark, I want to just ask you, because last week I had the opportunity literally to say, and I'm going to draw on David Byrne, the lead singer of Talking Heads, who in my day had such great, proclamations as "My God, what have we done?" which is what I said to the group in Salt Lake City for the No Kings rally. But this ain't no party. This ain't no disco. This ain't no fooling around. I'm not trying to dumb it down, but what I'm saying is that this. So, for example, we have talked within the context of what I laid out, and I'm going to ask this directly first, and I want to get your broader contextualization of what Bill and June just laid out. But I laid out that we have to go after Section 230 as a result of conversations that we've had on these podcasts as a part of what we're going to put forward as the New Untouchables initiative. And to that point, we just saw Mike Lee use and amplify and be amplified on X for outrageous propaganda in the vacuum of this murder, where of course he blamed it on Marxists and some other kind of just insanity, ridiculousness, but that was amplified and then drawn in by millions and millions and millions of people. And when you think of the paradigm, if I'm thinking this is an ad agency and I'm doing some sort of massive campaign, what it looks like as a reverse engineering scenario in terms of branding, let's put it that way, is that, and we saw this play out in the election, 77 million people purportedly voted for Donald Trump. And the idea is this gets more and more dumb and ridiculous and dangerous and out of control every second of every day. But at the same time, it's like the people who understand the law, the technocrats, the really smart people are behind the scenes allowing this, encouraging this, and doing this in a way that the law doesn't seem to be able to keep up with. A pretty bleak outlook, but I know good things are happening at the same time. How do you respond to all of that?
I'm going to make a note so I don't forget something. But my response is this: we've got to, look. They have used the social media and the changes in how we talk to each other to supercharge propaganda in a way that Hitler could only have dreamed of, and Goebbels and their like. And what we need to do, who care about democracy in the future, need to figure out a way to supercharge truth. How do we put the wind behind truth? And when you talk about Section 230, that's one. And again, part of this is going to require the Democrats to get out of the goddamn bed of the billionaire technocrats, because the obvious answer is to allow the legal system to address the truth and falsity of things that are conveyed on social media websites and on the internet, in the same way that they have been historically able to police false statements that are made in newspapers or by things sent in the mail or in any other way. This communication is no different, and these lies are no less harmful to society. And the fact that we have this artificial barrier that empowers these huge profit machines who only benefit from the supercharging of this disinformation because it drives eyeballs to their sites. So two things. We have to make truth more interesting, because that will improve the ability and put it forward in ways that are that people are able to hear it. But more importantly than that, we have to take down the barriers to attacking those that are going to use their money to purvey untruths. The leading star of that being Elon Musk, but the folks at Meta are close behind, in how they're allowing this to happen. So I that's the challenge. So direct answer to your question, that's the challenge.
Okay, but just a quick follow-up along
Yeah.
those lines too,
Yeah.
because you were all over the place. Last time we talked to you, you were in Los Angeles. You were on the front line of what was happening last
Yeah.
Friday. It
Yeah.
seems like,
Yeah.
a decade ago, but you were
Yeah.
literally seeing that there was no causality from the window that you were sitting in for the National
Right.
Guard, that it was something that the Los Angeles Police Department could handle, and everything that came with that. Not to mention, I haven't heard a lot of talk about the Marines in the last couple of days because we're talking about nuclear war with Iran, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but yet it's still to the threat of the security of the American people may as well be. I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but it's out of control what we're dealing with.
Mhm.
So can you maybe pick up also, maybe in the context to what our plan is, Mark, and if you could further maybe
Yeah.
frame, because that was a brilliant lead in, but I just wonder, I mean, the American people, from what I heard last week during the No Kings conference, and I heard it
Mm.
in person in front of 10,000 people, was they're desperate for
Yeah.
knowledgeable people like you guys to
Mhm.
be able to step into the void and do what, let's just say, the Democratic Party doesn't seem to be able to do at this moment.
Right. Well, let's talk about things. By the way, Bill, as much as they fumble the ball on the administration side of some of these lawsuits, and some of these strategies, we've been executing pretty good plays on our side of the legal strategy, and one of the things I think is really important is that we highlight those successes. For example, Zach Klein, the city attorney of the city of Columbus, sued the Department of Health and Human Services over the impounding of infectious disease grants, $3.1 million in infectious disease grants, and he got an order for the city allowing that to happen. An immigration lawyer this week got that student from Columbia that was arrested for protesting, released from custody to be with his newborn child, while his case is running through the court process. And very significantly, an organization that has been historically timid when it comes to the protection of the Constitution and democracy, the American Bar Association brought a interest-based, on behalf of our profession, brought a lawsuit that is valid, is meaningful, and directly addresses some of the issues that are ongoing, with the way the executive orders and how they're being directed at law firms, and how the administration is trying to undermine the ability of law firms to represent their clients. A little late to the party, but they're here. So welcome, American Bar Association, to what we're doing. So there's some good things that are going on. Another good thing that I encountered this week. We have a case involving unemployment benefits, to pandemic unemployment benefits that were denied to about 300,000 Ohioans during the last 10 weeks of the pandemic, of the extra pandemic unemployment benefits. And we've been talking to people who are recently left or at the Labor Department. And a lot of the discussion behind the scenes was how was people inside those agencies who are still there thinking about and asking people, and the chatter among them is what do I do when they ask me to do something that's illegal? And people are coming to grips with those problems. So add to the list that we need, whistleblower lawyers to be standing by here because they're, they can't operate the government without some people. And most people are law-abiding citizens, even people who support Trump. Many people who support Trump. I believe that almost all the people that support Trump see themselves as law-abiding citizens. And so those law-abiding government employees who are being asked to do things that are illegal are need to stand up and not do those things, and to raise the attention of the world to the act of being illegal. Because if they don't do that, if that doesn't happen, then it becomes normalized. And this is the goal, I think, of trying to take over the federal workforce in the way that they've planned through through Project 2025. I mean, again, this is the Frankenstein monster version of Project 2025. These corporate guys just want to be left alone by the government. That was the whole point of Project 2025. What Donald Trump has done is taken their strategies, which were brilliant in a diabolical kind of way, and has been using them to actually enhance executive power and to develop his version of American autocracy. So I think the people that are going to be most regretful at the end of this are the people that over the last 40 years worked on developing that Project 2025 scheme. But the pushback of those government employees, it's happening. It's happening quietly. It needs to be happening more loudly. But all is not lost. So even if they get their legal strategy together, they can't execute their bad deeds if the law-abiding people that work in these government agencies continue to be law-abiding people. So there are some there's some positive things going on. But again, when those people get fired, they need lawyers, and we want to try to find a way to get them lawyers. We want to make sure that people are that every single act is challenged, because what they can't do well, and to keep them on their heels, Bill, and continuing to make unforced errors, is to continue to flood the zone in response. I don't think they anticipated. Certainly, I don't think Russell Vogt and the folks that wrote Project 2025 anticipated how broad and strong the response of all the constituencies that are impacted by their dismantling of government are responding to it and litigating it. And so they don't have enough good lawyers over there to get it right. And if we keep pushing back at them, maybe they'll never get back on track, or give the Supreme Court or the Ninth Circuit something good enough to bite into.
Well, Mark, I appreciate all of that. And Bill, I'd like to turn it to you, but I'm gonna go to Eric just before, but just please hold in your mind what Mark so poetically laid out, because that is what I delivered to the Salt Lake City No Kings tour with all of our collective input in this to develop the flood the zone strategy, given all of those items that you had just checked off the box. And Eric, I find myself compelled to get you in on this conversation, but I want to try to tee you up based on a couple of things that Mark just said, because I want to reiterate that this page, this execution, this platform across everything you can see at Substack, at also, we've got a new YouTube page, we've got a new Facebook page, we're going to be throughout all of social media, but we're building this platform and flying it at the same time that I was able to introduce to the No Kings apparatus that I discovered in real time that people responded to, particularly afterwards, guys. Oh my God, you guys are doing this. I'm a gateway to this amount of people that are going to help facilitate whistleblowers, for example, or we're going to be engaged with you to help develop a push for reversing Section 230, for example, and so on down the line, just like you had suggested. So here is, in the moment, a real platform, an initiative by professionals that have been doing this for decades at the highest level of the federal government. And now they're lending their expertise pro bono to be able to facilitate doing what the Constitution requires, I would think, by the actual system itself that has been overrun by none other than corruption. Right, Eric? You have this wonderful platform that you're getting all of this information on an ongoing basis, wonderful shorts that build a bigger comprehension and understanding of corruption through the marquee people that we've introduced because of our work in the con and so on and so forth. Maybe take this even further about the notion of what Mark had suggested, and this is where I come from on this whole thing. We have got to be able to make the truth as compelling and more valuable than this ocean of madness and lies that has created this insanity that we're all in the midst of.
Right, right. Well, I feel compelled to try to build upon the note of optimism that Mark was saying there, and where I'm going to place that is that I was out at the No Kings rally in Akron, and I saw the level of participation. I also understood just how big a participation was in Cleveland, and then it pretty soon was clear that there was an awful lot of people who took the opportunity to go out and let their voices be heard. And I think that I don't know if anybody really anticipated just how strong the turnout would be and just how much support there would be for that particular demonstration across the country. And I think that that provides an awful lot to be optimistic about, because if people are motivated, if people are getting out of their house, out from in front of their screens and communicating and building community with other people, I mean, ultimately that's the foundational piece that we need in order to beat this thing. And I think that what I saw last weekend was a demonstration that we have a chance. We honestly have a chance out of the simple fact that enough people, I feel, are upset about these things and are aware of these things and don't want, to lose a sense of what their country is. And so I think that that's an incredibly positive thing. Um, that being said, I mean, some of the other stuff that happened last weekend is obviously concerning, and so many things that have happened since then. And I don't necessarily like the math, right? I mean, in order to be effective, Trump doesn't need the support of everybody. He just needs the support of his loyalists. And the propaganda that's tossed out there so easily and so rapidly is pretty much all that it takes in order to keep that loyalist group in line, right? And it requires so much more work to unwind the misinformation that's going out there. And not that I really care about the loyalists, but when you're a personality that's online, right? Like you and I are, we don't have we don't have the ability to necessarily completely ignore, the folks that come out of the woodwork. Like to some extent, we have to engage. Whether we necessarily get into the nitty-gritty, like on a comment by comment basis, is different, but certain things have to be responded to, just because that's the territory of which, we exist. And it's so much more difficult to unwind a mistruth than it is to throw out a mistruth. And not that we necessarily need to parry every single thing that happens, but to go back to what Mark was saying, somehow we need to not be on the back foot with these things. It seems like a mistruth is thrown out and it's always on the offense. We need to put the truth on the offense. We can't be sitting back and trying to play defense with the truth anymore. We have to push forward. And I think that's exactly, what you were talking about when you were addressing the No Kings rally in Salt Lake. And I think that's exactly what you are doing, Mark. And I think that's exactly what we're all trying to do, with this. And I think that it's so important that we take this energy and this understanding that there are so many more people out there who don't like what's happening. I firmly believe that after this weekend, that there are so many more people who don't like what's happening that we can actually, what would be the term? I don't want to say weaponize, but we can activate them and have them become, the vanguard by which the truth becomes something that's on the offense. We need to be on
Patrick,
the
can
offense.
can I amplify a couple things that Eric just talked about? One thing is, other than the rally you attended, every single one of those 5,000 rallies was peaceful, which we didn't take the bait, and turn those into an opportunity and an advantage for Trump. That's pretty amazing that many people who are not used to being out doing things like that were able to maintain, and the police departments that were overseeing them were able to keep those rallies in a very peaceful spot. So I think that's really something important to note. The other thing that I was at a presentation this week by the Democratic National Committee chairman, and I was very skeptical going in. In fact, I refused to contribute any money going in. I kind of laughed when I got the invitation. But here's what he said, and it makes a lot of sense, and I think it fits with exactly what Eric was saying here. In the campaign, while the Kamala Harris campaign was spending billions of dollars, $1 billion on television, which is yesterday's medium, the Trump organization was mobilizing individual influencers, every soccer mom with 1,000 followers, and either advertising or creating promotional relationships with them, or just organizing them to convey the message. There are as many. In fact, I think there's probably more if you look at social media. People who agree with us and who believe in democracy and the rule of law than those that don't. Yet there's not been a good, smart, concerted effort to organize those folks to carry the message out. And he promises to try to use the Democratic Party to do that. I have my doubts because of who their masters continue to be financially, but maybe. But if not him, somebody needs to do that, Eric. And I think I think that's exactly what you're talking about. But the action step is to figure out how to mobilize and train our online people to take the offensive position instead of always being on defense.
Well, and that's what we're collectively trying to do, but particularly because, and I find myself a little bit hedged and struggling because I want to simultaneously have both June and Bill respond to this. So I'm going to do kind of a compounded deal and let you guys take it to the way you want to take it. But look, to that point, we're going on the offense primarily because of what the new untouchables represent. Now that's, the platform that can hopefully find this incredible distribution for people that are looking for the answers that you guys provide, specifically the fight platform. And I think I'd like to just have Bill comment on the fight platform within the context of the integrity initiative. And then, like I said, because this is intertwined with where, June, you've been forever, particularly with your work on red state, blue state families, because of, I think a lot of this, rings true, but the propaganda is so effective and so overwhelming, and the echo chambers so incredible that have taken this technological nightmare beyond what Joseph Goebbels could have ever dreamed of, right? I know what propaganda is. And because of what Eric said, we happen to be guys that have made our lives mission and what we've done professionally to unpack that which didn't make sense, which led us to you guys, right? And to his point, yes, that is very, very, very difficult. So you've got to give people the ability. We're seeing a symphony of people on the signs at these No Kings rally that are posing the questions, honestly, that you guys have been answering your entire careers. And so what I'm trying to do is connect those questions with what you guys know how to do to give them the information to bring them what we're looking for. And I guess on that note, I'll leave it both to you, Bill and June, to kind of sort through the best ways to approach that given the scenario.
Yeah, let me comment on a couple of things. First, a lot of what's going on is what we've been seeing over the last several years. Melissa Hartman was a wonderful person. She's a graduate of the law school at which I teach. The dean of the law school worked with her. Governor Walz worked with her. He was in tears at the memorial service. And my friends who know her sing her praises. And Mike Lee comes out and says, it's the Democrats who orchestrated this. That's a lie, a made up lie. And the answer has to be shame on Mike Lee. The fact that Tina Smith called him on it, I want to applaud. The second thing to emphasize is that one of the reasons you see the violence is the more you have people who feel lost in a variety of ways. This society is not as supportive of them as the society in which they grew up. And Trump comes in and radicalizes. We need to emphasize this is like creating Marxist cells. MAGA is the Marxism of the moment. It is, it believes in true believers, purity, and winning at all costs. And Trump feeds them. And again, you have to say shame. And we do need to think how to enlist more people. So I will tell the story. I'm very fond of it. I was talking to my daughter about the protests, and our 7-year-old granddaughter came on, and she said, "What's a protest?" And I said on the spur of the moment, well, sometimes when what the government does is evil, you want to object to it and make it clear you don't support it. And so the children take out their artwork and they draw posters and they march with the posters, and the adults admire their posters. And she said, the 7-year-old, "I want to go to a protest." My daughter objected. She said, "You're ruining protests," and explained protests for objecting when the government does something that's wrong and you're trying to make it better. Serious explanation. But our son described the children of friends of ours that they love going to protests because they love making the signs. Making signs is an active participation that identifies the 7-year-olds with this movement.
Bill, your floor, fight.
Okay, so obviously I'm in the same space that Mark is. That is our proposal to do exactly what we talked about, and that's what my efforts have been attuned to. And indeed, 45 seconds before coming on this, I was drafting a paragraph for the Substack in which I emphasized that what we did in the savings and loan debacle was all offense all the time, because we knew if we just sat on the defense, we would be inherently lose catastrophically. But we also have to be aware that in U.S. military parlance, the phrase is the enemy gets a vote too. They have strategies, right? And they are going to be pushing them. And so we have to not simply defend, but do jujitsu, where we turn the momentum, the indecency, the vileness, the lies of their attacks into liabilities. I believe that's what Eric was just saying, right? We can't just always be on defense to these things. We have to say, this is a pattern. what do they always do when, these atrocities are pointed out? They lie, they reverse the facts, et cetera, and they do it in the most mean-spirited way. And for some reason, the super Christians are just particularly awful in this, just anti everything that the Gospels try to say. So, yes, we got to do those things. We have to also remember last time he was president, he wanted to shoot protesters. The general said no. And Trump said, well, can we just shoot them in the legs with high velocity rifles, which, by the way, can easily kill you and, of course, maim you as well. But, Eric filmed hunts. He can tell you very well what a high velocity round does to human or animal flesh type of thing. This time around, there's nobody telling Trump, no, you can't kill him, or even, no, it's not okay to shoot him in the legs either, type of thing. And Trump has not yet found, and I say this in particular to you, Patrick, and you, Eric, with your backgrounds. Last meeting, I mentioned they haven't yet found their horse vessel, their martyr. They will eventually find such a person. Something will happen somewhere, and it will probably be a very thuggish horse vessel a brown shirt terrorist and a pimp. Who was the anti-hero that they turned into the great hero. And as I said, was mandatory to treat the horse vessel song as equivalent to the German national anthem and to be giving the fascist salute throughout in multiple times during the horse vessel song, right? They actually had laws on this, but they also haven't yet found their Leni Riefenstahl, right? The think of the triumph of the will and such. This really high level artistic flair for staging stuff. But I've seen the early examples. ICE or, Homeland Security put out like a kind of like a snuff film and no actual murder, but it was all about, yeah, we're out here, we're all guys, we're super violent, and we want to fight, right? We want to hurt Americans and such. So they're already testing how to do this. Eventually, they're going to get somebody much better at it. So we have to be building that narrative. So, for example, in what you were all what Mark was talking about, there's a frigging whistleblower at Meta who has chapter and verse how Meta was used and allowed itself to be used to create, for example, genocide in Myanmar. Now, I know you have to explain that to folks. It's not a common name and such. But that whistleblower can be subpoenaed by any legislature with a Democratic majority in either house as part of the hearings and be subpoenaed because Zuckerberg is trying to prevent her testimony on any broad subjects because of his non-disclosure, his NDA. And that NDA can be broken, as we explain in the fight plan, by having the subpoena and then having a legitimate legislative purpose for hearings, which is the next part, a real reform package. Democrats saying we will break from the robber barons. So, as you know, Patrick, what I've suggested is that we brand no kings and no robber barons, right? These are the partners in crime destroying America. And I disagree a bit with Mark. They're not just hanging out there. They're using the government as their weapon. I mean, there would be no Elon Musk but for massive federal payments to Musk. And by the way, he just blew up yet another, his fourth in a row, I think, um, rocket, a day and a half ago, type of thing. But this myth of that these people are geniuses and that they do all the great things in our economy. Well, if so, if he's being rewarded and was made the richest person in the world by far because of his superb productivity, where the hell is it? Because what he's done is produce incredibly incompetent products. And the only reason this man is in business is because he sucks at the federal tip, right? All his net cash flows these days come from directly or indirectly from the federal government. Even Tesla, where virtually all the funds, the net funding, comes from the sale of emission credits to other firms.
Right.
So, yeah, we need to absolutely be on the offensive. We have a plan for how to do it. We also suggested immediately subpoena Musk. The man has just accused the president of the United States of a whole series of grave misconduct, and the president has responded that the guy he put in charge of Doge committed a whole series of atrocities. Why has no state legislative body or attorney general, Democratic attorney general, subpoenaed them at this point? Do it. Do it next week.
So that kind of brings up to me, where one of the roadblocks that we have are, and it's our own, ostensibly our own team, right? I mean, last week at this time, we were calling on Congress people or state legislatures or what have you to do exactly that.
And if
And
I could
I
just
think, go
interject
ahead.
one thing. And last week, 18 Democratic senators joined Republican ranks to push to save crypto scams,
including Adam Schiff.
including Adam Schiff. And this
Right.
just cannot continue if this party wants to ever come back to power.
Well,
Oh,
but
and
that,
that was the question I didn't get to ask the DNC chairman. I just they ran out of time. But that was the exact question I was going to ask. Well, how do we explain this?
okay, so I said to 10,000 people, and this needs to start to pollinate through all the groups, through all of our social networking, and everything that we can do to initiate to be able to lock this down. We've got a platform called the New Untouchables that defines all of these things, and we've got the Substack that's going to bring this further. It's a plan with. We need your assistance, my friends. Share this. We need to find state legislatures to subpoena Elon Musk now. Why? Because the Supreme Court said we need to prove intent. We've got it right in front of our eyes. That's one aspect of it. The whistleblowers are the other. If you're a whistleblower inside these tech companies, inside X, inside anything as a victim of Doge, maybe the tall building law firms and onwards, please understand we have a vehicle of experts that if you watch our work, The Con, at thecon.tv, you'll understand extensively how we actually understand the importance, the value, the revelations of whistleblowers and so on down the line. And I can continue to go that way, but I do want to make this point real quick to you, Eric, on this note, right? So ultimately, I come at this like, as these guys were describing, if we had our own Lenny Riefenstahl, right? I mean, I come at this from a kind of a Quentin Tarantino sort of school of thought. I could think of, Django through Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Glorious Bastards in my mind based on this Mad Magazine president. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, just in terms of, fictional depictions. But we're living in reality at a moment right now where the truth has to overcome the darkness of lies. And so, what are you discovering in some of your sort of new initiative by way of the content, how it's being performed, and some of the lessons learned in terms of how, let's just say, the truth finds its way to the audience that's looking for it. Because to reiterate what I know from first person experience in several different protests that go back to the hands off 50501 protest beginning in April to now the No Kings rally. And by the way, if you are an organizer at the No Kings rallies that are going to be organizing for the July 4th demonstrations, please understand that we have a group of people that we would like to speak and engage based on this element that I did last week, and we can get involved. But to turn the question back to you, Eric, you know, look, the algorithm, is it not designed really to perpetuate the lie at this moment?
Not necessarily. It's just that lies are often the thing that people want to hear. That's what the algorithms ultimately are all about. If you want to hear something, the algorithm knows because it knows by what you watch. Like it knows that you flip through this. Oh, this one's interesting. I'm going to watch that. And so it reinforces those things. And so in a way, it's a narcissism machine to a certain extent. But it's not necessarily something where it's like it's where it's only going to perpetuate lies. It's just going to perpetuate whatever it is that you are that you want to hear. And just way too often, that's a lie because sometimes the truth is difficult to hear. Sometimes the truth isn't what we want it to be. And so if you don't choose to watch those things, then the algorithm is going to reward you with what you do want to watch. And so I think that, how do you fight that? Well, I've recently had an opportunity to interview Gerald Casale of Devo, and one of the things that was really interesting about that is that they were coming out of May 4th, 1970, the shootings, the killings,
Kent State.
at Kent
Mhm.
State. And they were already like kind of fighting against the system. And what they realized was that fighting wasn't necessarily going to be the most effective thing in their mind. They watched what the powers that be did, through commercials, through like I think the moment that really caught him was that he heard one of the pieces by Pachelbel, and he came in from the other room only to find out that it was a commercial selling some ridiculous item, right? And that's when it struck him. He said, subversion. And that is ultimately what Devo became all about. And I think that there's something to that. If you understand how the algorithm is working and how it's getting information to people, you don't fight it. You go with it and you become a subversive element within that. And so it's the dark arts and it's like the evil parts of media, but in so many different ways. But ultimately, that's kind of the battleground that we're on in social media. And for better or worse, social media is where this battleground is. And so I think that taking what we can learn from how the lies spread and use those same techniques to tell truths is how in the media space we go on the offensive. And I think we're already doing that. And I think that it's going to take some time to get the inertia behind us in order to be the force that we need to be. But I think it's happening. I think it's happening right now. And I think that there's something else that's going for us. One of the things that helped MAGA become what it was that there is an awful lot of discontent with the other party in power. Now MAG is in power, and it's becoming a shit show. And so I think people are seeing that, they're understanding that, and I think that there is an incredible opportunity to drastically change the trajectory of this country if we can harness that. Because as it was said before, I can't remember who said it in this conversation, but MAGA people aren't necessarily, bad or, or evil or awful, and necessarily. In fact, like I think you said, I think that the vast majority of them aren't. They're just looking for an answer, and they knew they weren't getting one. And so they said, well, this guy sounds like he's going to at least break things. And so they went that way. Well, guess what? He broke them a little bit more than anybody bargained for. And I think that that's providing an opportunity for another vision to take hold and say, you know what? No, let's go this way instead. And man, that is what we have to do. And that is the part where it really pains me to see how completely visionless the Democratic Party is.
Well, it's a great.
Because if there was a vision, if there is that was coming out of the Democratic Party, boy, right now would be the time for it to just be taking off. But nothing. That's
But but
that's
that's
that's our
that,
biggest problem.
but that's not true because we've got the untouchables, not to be conflated with the Democratic Party. But
Yeah,
that, but
please
that's
don't.
but that's the whole,
Please.
but that's the whole point. And I do want to just say this because we're running out of time. We got a few minutes, but I would like to give everybody a final word here because this has been such a provocative conversation and so important given everything that's going on. But I want to reiterate what my colleague Eric and I have been doing now for like the last literally at least 6 years because we learned from Bill Black what it took back in the 80s leading into the 90s for the savings and loan crisis, the due diligence that Bill took to educate writers and journalists all over the country to understand what they were looking at that would ultimately lead to this groundswell in the papers that would embarrass the Department of Justice that then led to the opportunity to lead to the outcome of what Bill and his team had done so successfully in the savings and loan crisis. We, in this environment, are doing the same thing in our own way. And we're trying to reach out to, and those of you watching this, please put this on the radar of podcasters and everybody who is talking about these issues because we are literally the solution, or at least a very big part of the solution. So I'm going to give you guys, with a vision, I should say, I want to give you guys an opportunity to provide your last concluding remarks for this particular dialogue. I think I'd like to ask you, June, to start us off with your final thoughts.
Sure, and I'd like to start with what Eric said. So if you say, what's the vision? What's the critique of the current moment? There largely isn't. When I hear about the abundance agenda, I want to puke. Why? There's not necessarily anything in it that's inaccurate. It's that the idea that what we need is more things. We don't need more things. We have lots of things. What we need is meaning, honor, a sense of purpose, concern for others, and the sense we're building a better, more just society. So we know, I think back to the progressive era. Industrialization was incredibly disruptive. You had people go from farms where they spent their entire lives in rural areas to big cities. The jobs were insecure, they were dangerous, a lot of people got hurt, there was no social safety net. And as we know, the robber barons were greedy, and the titans of finance who replaced them were worse. Well, we're in the equivalent of that, except what's wrong is not that factory jobs are exploitative and dangerous. It's that the factory jobs are gone and nothing's replaced them. So you have lots of good jobs, like working for Google, not necessarily meaningful, but they pay well and no job security. And you have lots of bad jobs, like working for Walmart. And the jobs in between, teachers, nurses, doctors, jobs that help people, are under assault by Republicans, by this budget. They would gut rural hospitals. They would gut rural airports. When Hillary was running against Trump the first time, one of her plans was you put Bill Clinton, in charge of rural economic development. Republican, for one thing, that never took hold. My guess is most people never heard about it, but Republicans would have fought it tooth and nail. we need to say Republicans have launched a more than 40-year war on the economic foundation of security and meaning for American families. And unless Democrats address that, and fixing that is really tricky in the modern era, there is no counter to Trump. So Trump puts his finger on something that people feel is wrong, and he gives them smoke, mirrors, and hate. We need to say there is something wrong, and here's how we're going to fix it.
Mark, closing remarks, please.
Well, look, I mean, what everything June said is right, but in the coming weeks, we're going to watch the U.S. Senate debate a bill that does more damage in one vote to the social safety net in this country than the Republicans have really done over the last 20 years. It is. I think everybody is not understanding just how devastating it is, and all the different pieces of it. I mean, the bright side today, the parliamentarian of the Senate decided that you couldn't shut down the CFPB in using this bill, and I think a couple other non-budgetary agencies, and I think that they're going to follow that rule of law that's existed in the Senate. But there is so much to be worried about in this debate, and how the Democrats acquit themselves in this discussion, in this dialogue, and how the country acquits itself in applying the appropriate pressure to the members of the House and the members of the Senate. I don't want to go after Mike Lee because he's still a no vote on this bill. Can we wait on him, June, until after the vote on the big beautiful ugly bill? But that's I think this is an opportunity, and it's a huge there's a huge danger train coming down the tunnel at the working class and rural Americans that rely on this social safety net to survive.
Yeah, and then to your initial point, Bill, it's like, a war over there is to make sure you can't see the train coming off the tracks here, as you all have seen for many decades. Please bring us home.
Well, this is why I say that we need to add no robber barons, because there's a significant portion of the senior Democratic Party leadership that loves the robber barons, that wants to. The whole abundance agenda glorifies the robber barons, right? Says they're the solution. They're the problem, right? If you haven't learned that yet, that Ro Khanna came out when Musk had his latest breakdown, and got in the pissing war with the president of the United States and said, "Oh, great, an opportunity. We got to enlist this guy in the Democratic fundraising, type of thing." No, no, that's exactly the problem that we have to move away from. More broadly, Democrats should be absolutely committed to getting rid of Citizens United. More broadly, we need to save the Supreme Court, or save the rule of law from the Supreme Court down the road, type of thing, as again part of this no robber barons, because the Supreme Court, several key justices are literally the creature of the robber barons, right? They are funded by them. They were made rich by them. They are only on the Supreme Court because of them. So broaden the agenda. This is what Tom Frank was after, folks, right? Going, hey, why are Democrats so in bed with the billionaire class, right? Now, surely it doesn't mean you're evil necessarily because you have $1 billion. But the ones that want to, really get politicians in their orbit, yeah, pretty much they're evil, type of thing, you know. So the Democratic leadership is, to state the obvious, failing the country, but they're also failing the Democratic Party. And it's just dumb. It's just reached the point where it's obviously stupid. And if they can't get it together in these circumstances, they're just going to be blown up.
And what I'll say on that,
So,
what I'll say on that note is truth is marching, and that's the whole point of the Untouchables and the obviously anti oligarchy tour. Well,
if you don't mind, one quick thing
yeah.
before you close us out. Um, I think it was Gore Vidal that said that there's one party, the Property Party, and it has two right wings. And I do think that to a large extent that that's what we're dealing with. And as we're coming into this season of the Senate debating this monstrosity of a bill, I think one of the most important things that we can do, from an activist perspective and from a an independent media perspective, is to try to sharpen the focus of the upcoming demonstrations that are happening, all over the place. It's like there's four in my area just this weekend, into being about that bill and about applying pressure to the Senate, to the state senators to make sure that that bill does not get passed. I think that there are so many things and so many grievances to be expressed, but I think that right now is a time where we need to be focused. If we're going to be using this energy, we need to get all of these millions of people that came out to be focused on this one thing: destroy this bill. And I think that one thing that we can do as media personalities, you and I, Patrick, everybody here now at this point, is to try to sharpen that focus in the upcoming days, weeks, and months, um, days and weeks, I should say, because I think that that is incredibly critical at this point.
And
Well,
we can say people will die, and Jody Ernst knows it.
thank you for that, June. And what I'll say is what I learned a long time ago from the great Jon Snow. When enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything, then there are no more answers, only better and better lies. Everybody on this panel today just absolutely knocked it out of the park. I thank you so much for all that you do for us together and for this country. And I will just conclude with this new launch of the new Untouchables you can find on YouTube. We'll have Substack up and running. We also have TikTok, as well as, of course, Blue Sky and on X, and just pretty much all of the other usual suspects in media. But also please check and subscribe to everything that we're doing, as well as what Eric's platform is, Corruption Incorporated, the American Way. The more we get eyeballs on these truths, the more we get eyeballs on this content, the more we have a shot to compel the truth over this horrendous dark hole of this madness of what we're all in the midst of. So I will say thank you. And until next time, all the best to you all. Take care.
There.